Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer. I'm going to take these glasses off. This is AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show where we watch old 16mm films. And this was a home movie. The handwriting is unreadable. I can't really decipher it, even with reading glasses. And so I ran that on the telecine, which we have right there. Little tiny reel. You can just barely see. It's 100 feet of Kodachrome, it says on here, but it was faded red. So this might have been an early version of Kodachrome where the dyes were not set. It looked like it was Yellowstone. We saw Old Faithful in there. It's a common thing. So also somebody noticed the interlacing problem. So for me to run this at close to real time, I had to run it at 18 frames a second. And the de-interlacing software here doesn't know how to handle 24 frames a second. And so it was just freaking out. So that's why it was weird. And I tried to come up with different situations to fix it, but generally what I do is I capture film. If I capture it on the telecine, then I de-interlace it in post so that you don't see it. But when we're doing it live, then it's kind of, the software has to cope with it. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Thanks everybody yesterday for all the coffee. That was really sweet. And I think what we're actually going to do is spend some of the money on some supplies and like some tape, some splicing tape, maybe some reels, some cores, etc. But in the meantime, let's improve your reading.
Read, of course you do. You read in class and at home and in libraries. Well, for improvement in reading. Almost all of us have reading problems of one kind or another. Here's a boy who reads so slowly that reading is a chore which he has come to dislike. His case is similar to hundreds of others. Suppose we call him Peter. This girl's problem is that she reads too fast to understand what she is reading. And there are a lot of people who have similar problems. Let's call this girl Joan. And this boy, Billy. You can see what his trouble is. He points to every word and pronounces it with his lips. And many of us do the very same things. Every Monday afternoon in this school, students who want to improve their reading, students like Peter and Joan and Billy, can bring their reading problems to the school librarian, Miss Baker. In her conference room, Miss Baker devotes this time to what she calls corrective reading.
First of all, what were you reading in the library?
We had a history assignment to read.
And it was very hard, too.
I'll never be able to read it.
Well, I think the first thing we ought to do is to develop an interest in what we're reading. That is, read along in search of something.
What do you mean, Miss Baker?
I mean, we should ask ourselves questions about the things we read, and then look for answers, or look for solutions to problems. A topic can be interesting if we show an interest, too.
But I'd be more interested if I had to read about something I like baseball, for instance.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to do right now. I'd like each of you to come over to the bookshelf and find something that you really want to read.
Why, here's a book on furniture and interior decorating. This is exactly what I like. Oh, I think this would be fun.
Here's one called Who's Who in Baseball.
Golly, this looks good.
Radio's my hobby, Miss Baker. I'd like to try this one on radio mechanics.
It is a fact that if a reader is interested in his subject, he reads better. Interest in what we are reading helps us to solve our mechanical difficulties more easily. The card that Peter will read is a sample page from a textbook used by pupils about his age. By watching Peter closely, Miss Baker can see that he reads only one word at a time. He has not developed what is called a wide perception span. Perception span is the width of the printed material which our eyes take in at one time. Peter was slow because he saw and understood only one word at a time, like this. With a little practice, we can gradually increase our perception span. It helps, too, to remember the phrase just read, to think about the phrases to come. Not only does this increase our reading speed, but it also helps us to get the meaning by reading words in phrases. It shouldn't be hard for Peter to increase his perception span. He can try it with a book on sports he was anxious to read. When Joan is given the same sample material to read, she races through it, moving too fast and using no regular system of scanning the line. She reads rapidly, but does she read carefully?
Joan, did you understand all the words on the page?
Well, not all the hard ones. I had to skip over a few of them, but I got a pretty good idea of what I read.
Well, sometimes the meaning of a difficult word can be guessed from the context. That is, the phrase or the sentence in which the word is used. But if the context doesn't give you any clue to the meaning, you shouldn't go on without looking up the word in the dictionary and finding out what it means. Do you think you'll be able to read the book on interior decorating you selected?
Oh, yes. I really want to learn all about styles and homes and furniture.
Well, you're going to meet a lot of new words, such as Chippendale and architrave and, oh, many others. Promise me you won't race by them.
Oh, no, Miss Baker. If I'm going to be an interior decorator, I'll have to learn all those words. This time I'm going to read more carefully and more slowly.
By the way, that's a point all of us should try to remember. The speed of our reading depends upon the material we're reading. Story material, and that includes such things as novels and your favorite comic strips, can and should be read more quickly. But factual material, your textbooks and your guide on interior decorating, for instance, Joan, should be read more slowly. So let's all try to remember our purpose in reading, whether we want a general idea or specific information.
Miss Baker's next problem is to help Billy overcome a childish reading habit. Billy points to each word and pronounces it in a whisper.
Old John lived in British East Africa. Thomas and I on our good plane adventure in quest of motion.
Because of the time he loses in pointing and whispering, it takes Billy twice the average time required to read the sample page. Using his finger this way slows his reading, and moving his hand back and forth across the page is annoying. So Billy tries not using his finger to follow the lines. It's hard at first, but he manages to remember. But he is still moving his lips, which means that he can read no faster than he can pronounce each word. The thing he must do is keep his lips still and concentrate on reading as he should, with his eyes. Miss Baker illustrates a bit more with his book on radio. The book Billy selected is a good one because it has a lot of visual aids, illustrations, charts, and diagrams, which will help him to visualize what he is reading. All of us must visualize what we are reading. We must remember that printed words are symbols for real things. We must make mental pictures of the action or process or event the words describe.
So if you really want to learn about radio, you can train your eyes to move along in search of the information. I think that's something all three of you should remember. We have to want to read before we can get the most out of our reading.
Well, it's easy enough to be interested in our favorite subjects like baseball and radio and interior decorating. But what about the subjects that we don't like?
Well, that's a good question, Peter. It's not as easy to read things we don't like. But if we can improve our reading methods on material that we like, shouldn't we be able to apply the same procedure with any material?
That sounds logical, Peter.
But I'm interested in famous baseball players. That's a lot different from history.
Oh, I'm not so sure, Peter. Have you ever thought of history as a series of famous people? Of men and women with unusual abilities?
No, but that's an idea.
Each of you might be able to create an interest in history by interpreting it in your own way.
You mean I can find interior decorating in my history?
Yes, you could watch for styles in architecture and changes in costume and home furnishings.
What about radio, Miss Baker?
Well, radio is only one of a long series of inventions. You might think of the story of America as a series of great inventions that have helped so much to build it.
Yes, it's possible for all of us to develop an interest in what we read. When we do this, we can solve our individual reading problems much more easily.
I'd like you to read your new books, and then we'll discuss them when you come back next Monday afternoon. And will you all try to remember to correct your reading troubles as you read? Will you, Peter?
Yes, and I'm going to practice increasing my perception span.
I'm not going to read fast. I mean, not so fast that I don't understand what I'm reading. And, oh yes, I'm going to look up all the words I don't understand and make sure I know how they're being used.
I'm going to get over the habit of pointing to words and pronouncing them.
Good. And remember, we've only just begun. Reading is just like any other skill. You've got to practice reading and practice it constantly to develop good reading habits. Next week we can see what we can do about that very, very difficult history book.
Thank you, Cornette, for solving another one of life's problems. Now we're going to bounce over to Encyclopedia Britannica, the other Illinois educational film studio powerhouse. I've often said that Chicago was the Hollywood of educational films, just like Detroit was the Hollywood of industrial films, thanks to Jam Handy and others. Yeah, so Cornette was in Chicago. Encyclopedia Britannica was in Chicago. This is where I think filmmakers for Encyclopedia Britannica went a little crazy. So here's part of the Magic Moment series, Holding On.
Sailboats over there, see the ones with the white yeah, there's a big ship out there. It's just sitting. This piece? Let's grab it there.
Oh, boy. Good?
Yes, good.
Come on, how about you, Jack? Quit right here. Step right up. You can. It's only a quarter.
Glenn. Glenn, come here. Thought I lost you. Let's look.
That was short and sweet. I love the Magic Moments films. A lot of them deal with emotions and not necessarily, how to do something. It's more about how would you feel in this situation, and it gets kids thinking. So, big fan of that. Also, a big fan of insect mounting and preserving. Here's a film that teaches you the fundamentals of it. Enjoy.
Millions of years ago, nature preserved the first insects by turning them to stone. Specimens can be found today by chipping into the rock that imprisons the fossilized animals. After countless centuries, the true size and form of the ancient insect remains, perfectly replaced and preserved as stone. Today, man is able to preserve insects using a variety of techniques. Preserved specimens are most important as a fundamental basis for learning about insects. Insects vary greatly in physical form. Some are small and active. Some have very hard bodies. Others are very soft. Some are colorful. Some are delicate. Others are regular in form and shape. Preserving each different insect form presents a problem.
The specimen must be displayed to adequately show the identifying characteristics of the insect. Some insects can be preserved immediately at the time of collection. Good examples are the many forms found in and on water. These may often be collected by hand. They can be preserved by dropping them directly into a vial of alcohol, where they are quickly killed and preserved at the same time. Other forms live within rotting wood, under stones, in a great variety of places. Many of these can also be field preserved in alcohol. Larger, soft-bodied insects should not be directly preserved in alcohol. Additional preparation is necessary. The insect is brought alive into the laboratory and placed in boiling water where it dies immediately. The boiling water sets the internal tissues and keeps the soft portions in their normal position. After 2 to 3 minutes, the specimen is removed and the excess water allowed to drain on a piece of absorbent paper. It is then placed into a vial of alcohol for permanent preservation. Notice how lifelike the insect looks. For field preservation of winged insects, the insect is first netted. It can be killed by applying a slight pressure on the thorax while still in the net. The specimen can then be removed from the net and preserved in a glazed paper envelope. This field method can be temporary or permanent. Another method is preservation in containers called triangles, which are made by folding rectangular pieces of paper. This is especially useful for large winged insects. The specimen is placed in the triangle and the flap folded over. In this condition, layers of insects can be kept indefinitely or stored for later mounting. Delayed mounting of winged insects calls for a relaxing jar, a container with several layers of dampened paper covered with absorbent tissue. The now dried insect is placed in the relaxing jar for 48 hours to make it soft and pliable. Additional equipment needed includes a spreading board, a quantity of specially made insect pins, and some pieces of transparent paper, such as glazed paper. When mounting butterflies and moths, an insect pin is passed through the thorax of the specimen, vertical to its body. The pinned insect is placed into the groove between the two halves of the spreading board. The wings are drawn into position and held temporarily with pins. To keep the wings in this position, transparent paper is placed over the wings and pinned into place. Freshly killed specimens, as well as those from the relaxing jar, may be mounted in this way. Finally, the abdomen is properly aligned. Many specimens can be mounted on a single spreading board. The paper and pins hold them in a set position. A week later, the papers are removed. The specimen has now dried rigidly in the pinned position, resulting in an attractive and valuable permanent addition to the insect collection. Other smaller forms may be preserved indefinitely by placing them between layers of tissue paper in a can or box. Collection notes are kept with the specimens, but more about that subject just a little later. Regular forms, such as the katydid, are pinned through the thorax. It's important to insert the pin in line with the vertical axis of the specimen. The insect is then pinned in an upright position to a flat board. Additional pins are used to set the various parts, so they will remain in a lifelike position. Beetles are pinned through the right elytron, which is the wing covering. No further mounting is required. For very tiny insects, small minutin pins are used, which are attached to regular pins by a small piece of cork. Very tiny, delicate insects are mounted on points made of stiff paper cut with a protruding edge. A small spot of glue attaches the specimen to the point. Double points are used to hold delicate, larger forms. Some very tiny insects, such as fleas, may be originally preserved in alcohol, but for use must be further processed. The specimen is put in a solution of potassium hydroxide, which is suspended in double boiler position in boiling water. The potassium hydroxide dissolves out everything except the external skeleton of the insect. It is removed from the potassium hydroxide after 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the size of the specimen being prepared, and placed into a 75% solution of alcohol. The alcohol replaces the potassium hydroxide. The specimen is left here up to 1/2 hour and is then removed to a stronger solution of alcohol, which removes the last trace of foreign substance. After 5 to 10 minutes in this solution, it is put in a solution of xylol. The xylol removes the alcohol. Finally, it goes into a solution of clove oil. Specimens prepared in this way may be kept indefinitely in clove oil, or they may be mounted on a microscope slide for detailed study. In preparing a microscope slide, the glass slide is first completely cleaned with alcohol and wiped dry. It is placed on a simple paper layout. A small quantity of Canada balsam is used as a preserving medium. The specimen is removed from the clove oil and placed in the balsam. For exact positioning, the slide is placed under the microscope. A pointed object, such as an insect pin, is used to turn the specimen into proper position for the best microscopic view. Finally, a small glass cover slip is set on the balsam. The balsam hardens in 48 hours, and the specimen is indefinitely preserved for microscopic examination. Every insect must be labeled. Information should include date and location of capture, how collected, and name of the specimen itself. This information is usually put on 2 or 3 small labels which are kept with the specimen. Proper labeling is one of the most important parts of mounting and preserving insects. Papered insects are labeled. and those in transparent envelopes. Specimens in vials carry labels directly in the preserving medium. Microscope slides are also properly labeled for future reference. One of the most interesting ways to preserve an insect that might not otherwise be kept is to shoot its picture in the field right in its native environment. Most collectors prefer to shoot color slides, for they accurately reproduce the exact color and form of the living insect. This method of preserving an insect may be as important a collecting tool as the insect itself. Another collecting method is to draw a picture of the living specimen. This is especially useful when the collector wishes to emphasize particular detailed parts of the specimen. The drawing can first be made in pencil and completed by retracing the lines in a permanent liquid ink. There are countless ways, limited only by one's resourcefulness, of adding to the permanent, stable collection the living, unstable members of the wonderful world of insects.
So I think I took an entomology class in college, but I remember having to mount insects and also gathering them, and also there were places that we weren't allowed to gather them. So what we had to do is we would use these nets to gather the insects, then use alcohol to anesthetize them or kill them, basically. Then we would pin them, and we had to put like what the general name, the scientific name, and then where we got it from. And I remember some people in my class got in trouble because they got it from like a state forest or a national forest, and they weren't allowed to do that. So there you go. I collected many things in my time. I collected coins, stamps, baseball cards, comics, CPR dummies, and then films was kind of the final blow. High school marching band uniforms. Yeah, films have kind of taken over, so I don't have to go through that process with films as much. There's another convoluted process you have to go through with collecting films. Anyways, if you like what you've seen so far, or you feel like I've taught you really a life lesson or a life hack when it comes to mounting insects, you can buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks. You can also go to the avgeeks.com site, and we have previous shows on there and also DVDs. And also you can just hit like or subscribe, or you can ring some sort of bell, notification bell. I think that's what you do on YouTube. And of course, commenting and sharing with friends is really great. So I don't normally do requests because sometimes it's hard to coordinate and find a film. For example, someone has challenged me to try to find this film, New Breath of Life, which is a remake of the film Breath of Life. And I've still been looking for it. I still haven't found it. It's not where it's supposed to be. So there's, 35,000 films that I have. So it's kind of a challenge. If it's not where it's supposed to be, then it could be anywhere. So anyways, I'm still looking for that film. But anyway, someone recently said, hey, I saw this film in school, and I'm wondering if you have it. And he didn't know the title, but it's called Rescue Party, and it was part of this series where they would do dramatizations of short stories by Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury and folks like that. So there's others in this collection, and it might be ones that I'll be showing. There's what is the other one? 0 Hour is really good. Ugly Little Boy. the film we're about to watch called Rescue Party. Where's the other ones? Oh boy, I'm blanking. But anyways, they're longer. So this one we're gonna watch. It's probably gonna go over 2 o'clock, but it's great. So this is called Rescue Party, and it's on film. And I think I figured out the interlace issue. Fingers crossed. So here we go. Enjoy.
I know you have been wondering why we were ordered to abandon our survey and proceed with such acceleration to this region of space. We're approaching a sun which is about to become a nova. It will explode in 7 hours with an uncertainty of 1 hour. The star has a solar system. On its third planet, there is life. In fact, a civilization. It is our tragic mission to contact this doomed race and, if possible, save some of its inhabitants. That is all we can do with so little time.
Commander, how could this happen? Every planetary system in the galaxy is surveyed by the Federation every million years.
Less than 400,000 years ago, Federation survey ship S-5060 examined the planets of the system we are approaching. It found intelligence on none of them, though the third planet was teeming with animal life. It now appears that in the incredibly short period of time since the survey, only 400,000 years, intelligence has appeared. Radio signals and now television signals have been detected on Kulaf, 200 light years away. For at least the last 200 years, a civilization has existed on the third planet capable of generating electromagnetic waves. High-velocity scanners on Kulaf were focused on this system. They found that the sun was in an unstable pre-nova condition. I was contacted to proceed at once to the system before the sun exploded.
We have only a few hours, Commander. What do you suggest we do?
You, Orchestron, will take scout ship number 1. Captain Torkely, number 2. You will have 4 hours to explore the planet. At the end of this time, we will be forced to leave, with or without you. This planet has an oxygen atmosphere. Most of us on this ship are oxygen breathers. If contact is made with the inhabitants of this world, the mothership will follow at once. If there's any trouble, we will rescue by force and explain later. That is all. We enter atmosphere in 2 hours. beautiful planet, isn't it?
We're too late. I've monitored the whole spectrum. No radio, no video, no signals at all. Look. The sun. I suppose you're satisfied with the astronomer's calculation?
I've spoken again to the Kuloff Observatory. We have a safety margin, but they won't tell me what it is, in case I'm tempted to stay too long.
Looks as if it's going to explode any second.
Switch the viewing screen to the scout ships, please. There they go.
We'll soon know for certain whether anyone's alive or not.
Forests are burning. Before long, the rocks will be melting. What's that? A radio telescope, or some sophisticated form of communication equipment. I've seen installations like it on 100 worlds.
Listen.
It's transmitting.
But along a very narrow path. That's why we couldn't detect it from the mother ship.
Where is the information being sent?
Into space, I'd say.
I don't believe that a race which has had radio for only 200 years can cross space. It took my people 6,000 years to do it.
My people managed it in 3.
We must land and see if there's any sign of life.
Commander, Orastron has landed. The complex is deserted. She's not interfering with the transmission.
What message are they sending?
It will take us some time to decode it.
Where is it being sent?
Apparently, into space.
Space?
The crew of the rescue ship found a picture of them. Here it is.
They're apparently sending out information for another civilization to analyze and use, perhaps to avert the disaster that has overtaken them. We have to find them. How much time is left?
2 hours.
We are over a city. We must land at once.
We are shielded from the heat of the sun because we are on the night side of the planet. The moon, which happens to be full now, is reflecting the brightness of the pre-nova sun. It is safe to exit from the ship.
Good. Synodry, by reason of seniority, you will lead the landing party. I will be constantly hovering above you in the ship.
Did some wild animal do this?
It must have been vandals.
Neither. Suppose you had been working all your life behind this desk, dealing with endless papers year after year. Then suddenly you're told that you'll never see it again, that your work is finished. What would you do?
I'd tidy things up and leave.
Some individuals would have quite a different reaction. I think I should have understood the creature who sat at this desk.
Time is getting short. They were here recently and removed these books.
The books must have been valuable and someone came to rescue them. Perhaps at the last moment.
That means there must be a place of refuge, possibly near here.
Their final refuge could be any place on the planet.
Probably underneath the ground.
This is Captain Torkley. You must return at once. The mothership leaves in 40 minutes.
We are returning now.
The books from the library were taken down this passage.
How can you tell?
His senses are more acute than ours. Perhaps the refuge is down there.
Captain, can we take a few moments to explore? You can blast us out if necessary.
Yes, but be quick about it.
What do you think it is?
I would say it's a vehicle of some sort. It's a pity we won't be able to see where it goes.
The door!
I think it would be best if we were seated. Though our acceleration has been very smooth, we have already built up considerable speed. The machine works on the principle of differential air pressure before and behind us. It is a vacuum subway.
We don't have much time. I'm going to press one of the buttons.
I agree. Which will you try first?
This one.
There's no effect. We're still moving.
We are trapped.
This is Captain Torkley. You've just passed underneath the city and are heading out to sea. There cannot be another stop for nearly 1,000 miles.
What are we going to do? He can't be asleep at this time.
He is linked with other Palladorians. Each Palladorian is a mobile but still dependent cell in the consciousness of its race. In emergencies, millions can link together to form an intellect more powerful than any other in the universe.
Commander Alberon here. We have joined Captain Torkley and are above you now. You are heading towards a coast which you should reach in 30 minutes. If you cannot stop yourselves, we will use our main projectors to blast you out.
The sun will explode any minute. You will all be destroyed.
When the sun detonates, the explosion wave will take several minutes to reach us. Also, we are on the night side of the planet, behind an 8,000-mile screen of rock. When the first warning comes, we will accelerate, keeping in the shadow of the planet. Under maximum drive, we will exceed the velocity of light before leaving the cone of shadow. The explosion cannot hurt us.
How will you get a warning on the night side of the planet?
The Palladorians have given us the answer. The planet's moon is visible. If it shows a sudden increase in brilliance, our main drive goes on automatically, and we are swept out of the system.
This is Captain Torkeley. You have reached the coast.
We are stopping.
Let's get out of here.
We are going to blast. Stay where you are.
We got you out none too soon. Look. The moon. The sun has just turned nova.
The main drive is on. Yesterday, we went to the aid of a race that built a civilization in an incredibly short time. They might have offered much to the universe. Now they no longer exist.
Commander, I've been analyzing the programs being radiated by the transmitter.
What have you discovered?
There were cameras all over the planet, rotating continuously. In addition to the pictures, they were sending out scientific data. All of this was going out simultaneously on different wave bands.
I asked the question I asked before. Going out to where?
Not to any of the planets. I checked that out myself.
Unless there were some unreported outer planet.
No. These transmissions were to outer space.
Sent out in the hope that another civilization would someday receive the story of their catastrophe.
Alvaron, suppose we have underestimated these people?
What do you want?
To follow that beam. See where it leads.
That would mean deceleration and complicated maneuvering. We're already low on fuel. You feel it's that important?
It is that important.
Have you found something, Rugan?
Yesterday, on the mass detectors. But I wanted to establish visual contact before I called all of you. The viewing screen, Commander.
What nebula is that?
It's not a nebula. This race that has known radio for only 200 years, this race that we believe had crept to die in the heart of its planet, we must go to a higher magnification.
Space fleet.
What you are seeing is a small part of the greatest space fleet that has ever been recorded. A fleet larger than any planet or confederation of planets has ever assembled. Each point of light represents a ship larger than our own. Of course, they are primitive. They're actually traveling slower than the speed of light. It will take them centuries to reach the nearest star. The entire race has embarked on this journey in the hopes that its descendants will complete it. They plan on a voyage that will continue on for generations. I want you to consider the extent of these accomplishments. Think of the ages it took to evolve our technologies and the ages beyond that it took us to conquer space. Now remember, this is the youngest civilization in the galaxy. 400,000 years ago, it did not exist. What will it be in 1,000,000 years?
You, Orchestron. take your scout ship and make contact with their fleet. Your arrival will be a blow to their pride. All isolated races imagine they're the only beings in the universe. But they should be grateful to us. We'll save them hundreds of years of travel.
I feel a bit afraid of these people. Suppose they don't like our Federation.
After all, we only outnumber them 1,000 million to 1.
So, it had a real Star Crash feel to me, that Italian knockoff of Star Wars, with all the different types of aliens and people's painted silver and all that. But it was a bunch of boardroom meetings. That's what this film was a bunch of board members getting together and arguing with each other. So it was like the bureaucracy of an alien, various alien civilizations that have gotten together. So there's a tedium to that. And also, I wanted somebody to say, especially since this is an Arthur C. Clarke story, I wanted somebody to say, oh, so that project where we put the monoliths on that planet early on, seemed like it worked. It seemed like it nudged them along so that they could develop this space fleet. Anyways, it's fun. I love 70s sci-fis. I love 70s movies, but 70s sci-fi is kind of great, especially when you have a limited budget. This was not really shown in theaters. This was for educational markets and for maybe television, but normally it was just educational stuff. So we have more films from that series, like I said, some Ray Bradbury and some other Arthur C. Clarke, and some Isaac Asimov, of course. The Veldt was the film that I was thinking of that we have. So I might bust some of those out in the next couple of weeks. We'll watch maybe one a week. But thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope we learned something. Again, if you like what you saw, you can buy some coffee, hit like, subscribe, and you can go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we have. We'll be back again tomorrow, 1 o'clock. And please rewind, love each other, and a smiley face with eyelashes. And have a good rest of your day. Take care.